Hello everyone and welcome back to the Great Book of Grudges. My name is Nathan and today I'd like to talk about Total War Warhammer 3 again. Specifically a possible faction that will be included into the third game, that being Kislev. I'm going to focus more around what possible units they may have and not about mechanics and so on, because I'm not really good at guessing that type of stuff. But in terms of units, we'll look towards the official White Dwarf supplement and War Master, and then we're going to just speculate a little bit. So without further ado, let's begin. Kislev is a cold and harsh nation situated in the northern reaches of the Old World. Its people are a hardy folk. They are fighters more than anything else, having been used to having to deal with chaos invasions on numerous occasions. It is speculated that the Kislevites themselves are always battle ready, and while we don't really have that much knowledge on their armies, given what we've had in terms of lore, the White Dwarf supplement, War Master, and Mordheim, we can more or less make up an army list. So let's go check it out. First, we look towards the Bog Standard Infantry, which would be the Kislev Corsairs, and I know I'm probably going to pronounce these names a little wrong. These are basic Bog Standard units which are known to carry hand weapons, bows and great axes at the same time. However, I think that they'll most likely split them up into different units in order to actually get some different units on the tier levels. It is more than likely that we'll see them with hand weapons, bows and great axes separately, maybe with a variant of hand weapon and shield. However, that being said, we do know of units such as the Lothran Sea Guard who use spears and bows at the same time, so it could be possible that we'd actually see them as a direct unit. However, obviously in terms of army roster, they would actually have to make something larger, so they'd probably separate them for that case. In terms of elite infantry, so higher level units, there is the form of the Streltsy. These are units that are trained to fight with both handguns and halberds, so it makes them quite versatile, and I think that these would be the units that we actually see more as the Lothran Sea Guard of Kislev. It also presents them with armor-piercing units, which to be honest is quite needed for Kislev, considering that they have to deal with chaos head-on, so it does actually make a lot of sense. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of Kislevite infantry, so splitting up the units a little bit into their own respective units rather than being one unit with 3 different types of weapons would make a lot more sense in order to fill out the roster. But now we look towards the cavalry, specifically the Horsemen. First, we look towards the Ungol Horse Archers, which would be your basic fast cav, which would use bows and swords. However, also due to the fact that there's not a lot of units in this roster, they should also add a spear and bow regiment, so you could actually use it to charge your enemies through the flank or the rear. Just like that, one unit turns into 2 and you can use them for a multitude of things. You can keep running and firing, and then you can also charge in if you've got the spearman variant. Naturally, the warriors of Kislev wouldn't just have basic fast cavalry. Instead, they'll also have some heavily armoured lancer units known as the Winged Lancers. These would function in a very similar way to the Reiksguard, where you'd have 2 variants, one with hand weapons and shields and the other one with lances and shield, both naturally wearing heavy armour. You'd use these units to flank your enemies or charge them straight on, but they wouldn't be something too special, maybe a mid-tier unit, because obviously you would have the Griffin Legion, which would act in a very similar way, if not same carbon copy as the actual Winged Lancers, but much more powerful. Once again, 2 variants would exist, the hand weapon and shield, and the lance and shield. Moving swiftly on, we can't talk about cavalry without some monstrous cavalry, which would be the Bear Riders. Kislev needs monstrous cavalry, and Bear Riders would be super cool. They'd be small units akin to the size of maybe the Demogryph Knights, and they would actually be able to hold out their own in combat, being able to fight larger monsters such as the trolls and the mammoths that will be coming from the north to them. Honestly, I see these riders as lancers, and maybe just hand weapons and shields and just smashing their way through lines. They would be tough and resilient, but they would also be kinda slow. Obviously, they wouldn't move as fast as a Demogryph, and they probably wouldn't be as fast as a horse, but maybe just a little slower than the basic horse cav would be cool, and just resilient enough to be able to fight. You could probably have 2 variants, one with standard bears and then another one with like an armored bear, or maybe keep the armored bear for the heroes and lords. It would also be cool if they had the War Master variant of the bears too, where you could actually field bears as just monsters, so very similar to how other factions field animals, so very small groups of bears that they can use like most people use their warhounds, just to do some damage and not have riders on it. In terms of artillery, unfortunately the Kislevites don't have much going for them and would pretty much be a carbon copy of the Empire in one sense or another. Most likely both of them would have cannons and motors because it makes a lot of sense for them. Funnily enough, they also did have access to war wagons in War Master, so obviously that makes sense for them to have too. Honestly, I know this isn't very inspired, but it's what they actually had in the tabletop in both games, so hey, it does make sense for them to have. But that's pretty much it that they have in terms of units, so let's move on to characters. Unfortunately, in terms of legendary lords, there's only 2 named characters that were actually played in the tabletop. I might be wrong about this, however. We do have the Tsarina herself, Catherine the Ice Queen, and obviously her father Boris Ursus, but I don't think that Boris would be made a playable character given the fact that she becomes Tsarina when her father passed away. The Tsarina herself would probably be the ruler of Kislev, and we'd probably find some very obscure character in the lore who would end up being the next legendary lord. There are a few, to be honest, just not a lot of lore about them. Don't worry, we'll get towards the magic eventually, we're just going to speak about the other characters right now. In terms of heroes, we'd probably see the Druzinas come into effect, which are low-ranking nobles throughout Kislevite history, and yeah, they wouldn't be too great, but they'd be your basic captain type of stuff. Think of the Empire captain just differently. They'd be able to fight with range and melee weapons, but nothing too special about that. Instead, we'd see more variety in the Lord section, where we'd see Ice Witches, and maybe some other casters that would cast from the other laws of magic, but we'll get to them soon. And lastly, for a basic general, we'd see the Boyars. They would fill the Lord section rank. These would work as the Empire commanders in a very similar sense, but would be able to be upgraded to ride on horses, and then possibly bears too. I think that would be rather cool to be able to have a leader of an army riding a bear into battle, very similar to how we have Norskins riding mammoths. As I said before, unfortunately Kislev doesn't have a lot of variety when it comes to units, and unfortunately even when adding in War Master and Wartime into the equation, it's still pretty much bare bones, but I'm pretty sure that Creative Assembly, and working with Games Workshop of course, they'll be able to come up with some extra units that they'll be able to flesh out the roster with more. But before we end this video, I'd like to talk about the laws of magic that I think will be available for Kislevites, considering the fact that I think there will be more than just the Law of Ice. Naturally, if we do get Kislev as a playable faction, it's more than likely that we will get the Law of Ice too, because considering the fact that it is only available for Kislevites, and their legendary lord, the Tsarina, is a practitioner of this Law of Magic, it would make no sense if it wasn't introduced. The Law of Ice itself works on buffs for their own units, some terrain movement and so on in terms of vortexes and summoning of terrain, and also some basic damage missiles. It's nothing too special, but it's something that will make Kislev unique. But I also think that the Kislevites would also have access to 3 more laws of magic, that being the Law of Beasts, the Law of Light, and the Law of Fire. This is because in Kislev there are 3 primary gods: Ursun, the father of bears, which would make sense to have the Law of Beasts; Daz, the god of fire and the sun, once again for fire; and last but not least, Thor, the god of thunder and lightning, which would make sense for, well, the Law of Light considering Ursun's thunderbolt. This would present a nice bit of variety for the Kislev army in terms of magic, which would allow them to experiment a bit, especially when fighting against chaos. These are my thoughts of what would actually be presented in the Kislevite army pack if we actually got them as a DLC or part of the core game race if we ended up getting them for game 3. Have I missed any units out, or do you think that there's actually some other forms of units that may be included? Let me know in the comments below so we can actually start a little bit of a discussion. But with that, my friends, we've come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. If you did enjoy the video, might I suggest giving the video a like, or even subscribing to the channel, as it really does help us out. In the description below we have various social media links such as Facebook, Instagram, Discord and so on, where you can chat with the Great Book team. Also in the affiliate link below is an affiliate link with Element Games where you can buy loads of hobby products, not just Warhammer, for 10 to 25% off, and it also supports the channel at no extra cost to you, which I think is pretty cool. A big thank you to our patrons. Your support means the world to us. Honestly, it's really cool to see that you guys would be willing to support such a small channel, actually try and get out there. But once again, it's also great with all of you guys with liking, sharing the videos and so on. Honestly, it really brings a smile to my face. But with that, my friends, thank you once again, and I shall see you all again very, very soon. Have a good day.